Okay, so welcome. My name is Monica Elliott. I am co-president of the League of Women Voters here in Broward County. And the other co-president is also here, and that is Margie Robach. So we are going to be talking about the Florida election laws. The first thing that I want to do is explain a little bit about the League of Women Voters for those of you who are not League members. The League is a nonpartisan political organization. And by nonpartisan, I mean that we do not support or oppose ever in a 103-year history political candidates or parties. However, we do advocate on legislative policies and changes for the public good. We were established in 1920 when women got the right to vote. Men are welcome to join, and they have been since 1972. We are fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we serve all voters to promote good governance. Just a reminder, these are the election dates for 2024. We have two primaries, and a reminder that Florida is a closed primary state, meaning you must be registered with a political party in order to vote in that party's primary. But note that the August primary date also includes nonpartisan elections for judges and school board. At least for now, the school board is still nonpartisan, and everyone can vote for those offices. On November 5th, then, is the general election. So this is what we're going to cover in the presentation today. 3 election laws, voter turnout in Broward County, the ups and downs, 3 PVROs, what they are and how the laws have affected them, voter registration and vote by mail requests, and then get out the vote efforts. These are the 3 election laws that have passed the legislature in the last 3 years. After an almost perfect election in 2020 in Florida, the legislature passed SB 90 in 2021. And this law was kind of the first one that starts making a lot of changes for vote by mail. And it changed what we have to provide in order to get that vote by mail ballot. Before, we only had to provide our date of birth and the name. Now we have to provide either our Florida driver's license or ID, or the last 4 digits of our Social Security. It also requires us to request a vote by mail ballot more often, every 2 years rather than every 4 years. It reduced accessibility to drop boxes in a couple of ways. One, it restricts the number of vote by mail ballots that you can possess when you drop them off. And then it also limited drop box access to early voting hours unless that drop box was located at the supervisor of elections office. Prior to this, they were open, those drop boxes were available 24/7, and they were monitored by cameras. And with this law, the drop boxes have to be monitored in person, and they were restricted as to when they were available. There were other changes due to SB 90. One included the expansion of that no solicitation zone to 150 feet. But this was the first law that actually started, and I'm just going to use the word, they were attacking 3 PVROs. And a 3 PVRO is a third-party voter registration organization. These are essentially groups that are not associated with the government who registers voters. And this includes the League, but it also includes the political parties. We had 3 statements that we had to tell voters when we registered them using the paper voter registration application. It's also in SB 90 that they instituted the Resign to Run law, and it also required a person to be registered member of a political party for the prior 365 days in order to qualify as a candidate of that party. Now, in response to SB 90, the Broward County Supervisor of Election, Joe Scott, worked with the county library system to establish permanent, and permanent is in quotes, supervisor election branch offices that would allow those places to be vote by mail drop-off locations outside of the early voting period. He also developed this trifold mailer, which has a voter registration application and a vote by mail request. And then thirdly, he developed a special form that 3 PVROs could use, and that included the 3 statements, the disclaimers that we had to tell people. And as far as I know, no other supervisor of election did this. I know no other county has this trifold mailer. There may be some others that had developed a special form that first year, but no other county has this mailer to use. Next, the legislature passed SB 524 in 2022, and it clarifies the meaning of, quote, a permanent branch office of the supervisor of elections, and that did affect Broward County. With this law, the branch offices have to be open essentially 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, rather than just 1 day a week, which is what we were doing in Broward County. And then this is also the bill where we have the infamous renaming of the drop boxes to secure ballot intake stations. They also created the Office of Election Crimes and Security, which still seems to be rather unorganized, and we know that it has done some horrible things. And they repealed the disclaimers that the 3 PVROs had to tell voters. But those disclaimers were being put into a revised uniform statewide voter registration application. And I don't know why. They started on the revision of the voter registration form in June 2022, but it still has not come forth yet. I'm not really sure why. I do attend on behalf of the League, the Division of Elections Rules Committees. And so I know when we get started on it, but I still haven't seen anything further since June of last year. We also see a significant increase in the penalties that could be placed on 3 PVROs. And for example, at that time, I think we had to turn in that paper voter registration form within 10 days of the voter filling out the form. And if you were a day late, you would be subject to a penalty, but it was only like $50. And they started increasing the amount of those penalties. And then it was also in this bill that the legislature passed the law that says it prohibits the use of ranked choice voting in any election in the state. And like what was happening, I think there's 3 states that do it, and one of them was Alaska, and they want to make sure that that never occurred here in Florida. On the next few slides, because remember, we did have an election in 2022 after these first 2 laws, SB 90 and SB 524, had passed. So in the next few slides, I'm going to show you voter turnout for the last 5 elections here in Broward County. And as you will see, I have broken down a voter turnout by party and by race and ethnicity. So the first slide you're going to be seeing is the number of people that were eligible to vote in Broward County. The second line is the number of people who voted. And thirdly, in red, is the number who didn't vote. And then the last line is the vote difference statewide for either governor or president. And this is just dealing with the top 2 candidates. So as you can see, except for the 2022 election, the number of people not voting in Broward County was greater than the difference, or nearly so when it comes to 2020, than what that statewide difference was. So for example, in 2014, and for governor, this was between Scott and Charlie Crist, the difference between those 2 candidates was just a little over 64,000 votes. And yet we had almost 591,000 non-voters in Broward County alone. We see the same thing in the presidential race of 2016. It gets much closer when it comes to the midterm in 2018. And then in 2020, we see a much wider difference in the presidential election, almost 372,000, and we had almost 303,000 people who didn't vote. And then 2022, everything just sort of went downhill in terms of we have less than 50% turnout for vote in Broward County. Now, in the next slide, I'm showing you the total percentage voter turnout in the November general elections. And the numbers, the years that are in red, those are for midterms. The ones in black are the presidential election years. And then it's broken down by party. We have the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and for those who registered with no party affiliation, that's the NPA. And so you can see what the voter turnout is for the total eligible voters, and then broken down by party. And of course, we always have lower voter turnout for midterm elections. Although in 2018, we actually did fairly well. But again, in 2022, we started going back down to less than 50% voter turnout. Now, to make it just a little bit easier to compare, this slide is just showing the midterm elections. And then I calculated the difference between 2018 versus 2022 voter turnout. And that's what the light blue number is above in the bottom row. And so that shows you that we had a 13% decrease between 2018 and 2022 in the voter turnout. And this is between the parties. Now in the next slides, and this is for the presidential year, 2016, 2020, we actually see an increase across the board in voter turnout for 2020. Now, the next slides, we're looking at the percent voter turnout, but we're breaking it down by the total percentage who voted, and then by white, black, or Hispanic voter classification. And this is, self-classification when you turn in your voter registration form. And again, the red numbers reflect the midterm election years. And so what I'm going to do now is show you just for the midterms. So this slide just has the midterm election years. And we're showing the total percent voter turnout, the white, black, and Hispanic voter turnout. And then in the very bottom row is that comparison between 2018 versus 2022. So while there is a significant decrease in voter turnout between 2018 and 2022 across all three groups, what I want you to focus on is the black turnout. It was almost a 23% decrease. And that is extremely alarming. Furthermore, we've never seen such a difference between voter turnout between the white and black communities as what we're seeing here. Previously, they were equal or nearly so. And so then that's the question, why such a decline? Is this voter suppression? And I think there's probably some of that. But I also hear from people that there was a dislike of the candidates who are at the top of the ballot. And so people did not go out to vote. And we have to break through that barrier and make sure people understand just how important their vote is. I mean, if you don't like the people at the top of the ticket, that's fine. But you still have all these local races, the school board, within your city, at the county level. And we have to get the voter turnout back above on the 50% mark. Now, the next figure, what we're seeing is the presidential year election turnout. And again, that was a good sign. It's what's happened in the midterm. So next, in an attempt to figure out where the voting decline was the greatest in 2022, I looked at voter turnout based on county commission districts. If you recall, Broward County has embraced the fair district standards, unlike what's happening at the state level. So districts 8 and 9 are majority Black districts. District 1 is majority Hispanic district. And then District 7, down in the south in the middle there, it's a mixed minority district with 44% Hispanic and 36% Black. And so what we have the county commission district, and we've got the total percent voter turnout within each district, and then the white percent voter turnout, Black and Hispanic. And so you can see that there is a definite difference in turnout between the districts. Remember, for example, District 1 is primarily a Hispanic district. District 8 and 9 are primarily Black districts. And then District 7 is the one that is 44% Hispanic and 36% Black. So it gives us an inkling of where we're seeing the low voter turnout occur. So we still have one more election law, and that was SB 7050, which was passed this year in 2023. We have more changes to the vote by mail process, more restrictions placed on 3 PDROs, and then it also clarified the resign to run law and to state that it does not apply to those seeking office of the president or vice president. Now, a lot of people blame this law as the reason that everyone has to make a new request for vote by mail ballot. But that actually is due to SB 90. They kind of grandfathered in the 2022 election in SB 90, but then it stated that, on December 31st, 2022, all vote by mail requests will be null and void, and everybody was going to have to make a new request. But that was due to SB 90. So this is just showing you the different voting methods that we've used in Broward County in the last 4 elections. I couldn't find the breakdown for 2014. And all this information is on the Division of Elections site for Florida or on the Supervisor of Elections site here for Broward County. Anyway, this shows you the voting method breakdown. And there's definitely been a shift to the vote by mail. We knew that happened in 2020 during the pandemic. It declined again in 2022 after the pandemic was mostly over. But we still have the majority of people voting by mail. And then it's split pretty evenly between early voting and then election day. But that doesn't stop the legislature from making changes. So what they've done is they reduced the time to request that vote by mail ballot be mailed to the voter to 5 p.m. on the 12th day. It used to be the 10th day before an upcoming election. And that's probably not a bad thing because we know that there's issues with the mail, and this way the voter should be getting their ballot. But the other thing that they did is that the voter or their designee, they cannot pick up that vote by mail ballot during the early voting period or on election day unless they're going to affirm that it is an emergency. Previously, this only applied to election day. So during the early voting period, you could just go into the Supervisor of Elections office and simply do a normal request for a vote by mail ballot. Now you're going to have another form that will have to be filled out in order to obtain it. So it's just another step in the process. Then the other thing that's changing, and I don't know if this was frequently happening or not, I hadn't heard that it happened all that often, at least in Broward County, is that the Supervisor of Election they have to reject all vote by mail ballots that arrive in the same mailing envelope together. So, for example, if two people lived in the same household and they decide to save the county some money, they put both their ballots into one mailing envelope. Their votes are not going to count. They are not going to be allowed to cure their ballots. For all of the problems that you might have with a vote by mail ballot, the SOE is able to call you, email you, let you know you forgot to sign it, whatever it might be, and you are allowed to solve the problem or cure the ballot. That's not going to be the case with this situation. The voters can vote in person, but they're going to have to be made aware of the problem in a timely manner if they're going to be able to do this. Again, why this became such an issue, I don't know, but there we have it. Now, on the bright side, SB 7050 does clarify that vote by mail ballot requests can be made on the website that had never been actually specified. Also, we still have the rule that a voter can only return the voter's vote by mail ballot, those of the immediate family, plus two more, for example, friends or non-family members. And then it also clearly defines what immediate family is. So that's a good part. But what SB 7050 did is it just slams 3P VROs, those third-party voter registration organizations. And I just want to clarify, what it is that makes an organization or even a person a 3P VRO. If that organization collects any completed or otherwise non-blank, so like if you had a half-filled voter registration application and you collect that from a voter, you are a 3P VRO. So it's that act of collecting or handling a completed voter registration application that makes you or triggers the 3P VRO. So this is the changes that have occurred. An organization is going to have to affirm that each person who is collecting or handling a voter registration application, that old-fashioned paper form, they're going to have to affirm that they are a U.S. citizen. Now, this portion about the U.S. citizenship, this portion has been blocked by a judge, at least for now, but the rest of it is still in effect. And you also have to affirm that each person that's doing the collection has not been convicted of any of these crimes that are listed here. For each violation, the fine is $50,000. That's an extraordinary amount of money, and one that most organizations could not endure for an honest mistake. The other rule that's going to go into effect is that probably by October 1st, if a 3P VRO collects the paper voter registration application, we would have to provide a receipt to the applicant with all this information, including the name of the registration agent. In other words, the league volunteer. So because of these new rules, the league has elected to cease operating as a 3P VRO as of July 1st. We do not collect any paper. We don't collect voter registration applications. We don't collect vote by mail requests. Now, we can still help voters register to vote, but we are not collecting any paper. And in this next slide, I just want to show you how this has affected the 3P VROs. So you can see the 3P VRO, that column is in red, and it shows you the sharp decline that has occurred with new and pre-registered voters by 3P VROs. The lowest we ever had was in 2021, and we had about 16,000. we only have about 3,181, and that was as of the end of July 31st. And I doubt if that's going to increase very much. And if you're just curious what these are, DHS&V is Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. Mail is when a voter actually mails it into the Division of Elections. Other would be public assistance or armed voter, what do I say? Like the Navy and Army recruitment offices. Those turned in via the library. OVR is online voter registration, and SOE is obviously if it's turned in directly to the supervisor of elections. So one thing this slide shows you is that new and pre-registered voters are primarily being registered through the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. Again, the league is helping people register to vote. What other local leagues are doing is they're providing stamped envelopes for voters to send in their completed application to the local SOE. And as before, we've always have helped register voters online, either with the voter's electronic device, such as their phone or an iPad, or if the league happened to have a computer at a tabling event. So we would do it online at registertovoteflorida.gov. But for the Broward County League, again, just like everything else, Broward County has been in this wonderful little bubble, and that we do have the Broward County SOE trifold trifold mailers to use. But I want to emphasize the league still cannot collect these mailers. We can help a person fill out the forms, but it's up to the voter to mail it. And then these applications are only useful with Broward County residents. And so as we found out this weekend when we were up in Deerfield Beach, quite possibly you might have somebody from Palm Beach County. And so we're going to have to, provide blank envelopes and stamps for those people. So if you've not seen this mailer, this is what the front of it looks like. And we're only going to use this for voter registration if the voter has never registered to vote in Florida, they need to make a name change, or they need to update their residential address. Again, the top 2/3 of the mailer is exactly like the old paper voter registration form, and we would fill it out in the same way as they have done before. The question that we always have to be cognizant of is, should a returning citizen register to vote? And they should, but only if they are sure that all terms of the sentence have been completed, and this includes the fees and fines, and that their voting rights have been restored. Because it is a felony to falsely swear you are eligible to vote if you are not. And this is where the problem came in with the election police this past year. Now, the league, we always have information, and we do have information to help people with the restoration of their rights. We have these postcards that we can hand out. We've got a flyer with a QR code. These are the same postcards we are mailing to returning citizens. And if you are a league member, you can request these postcards from me. And I've got my email address there, melliott, 2 L's and 2 T's at ufl.edu. Or you can attend our next postcard party, which is next Wednesday at 1 p.m. And I promise you that I will have my famous banana bread available for you. So moving on, the bottom portion of that vote by mail request form is the bottom portion of that trifold mailer is the vote by mail request form. And again, this is only going to be useful if the voter is registered in Broward County. And I've just got a couple of numbers there. In 2022, there was almost 227,000 voters who requested or did actually vote by mail. But so far, we only have about 80,500 voters who have requested that vote by mail ballot for the 2024 elections. And that was as of yesterday. The league has always recommended that you request a vote by mail ballot, primarily because you just never know what's going to happen. We can have a hurricane and nobody be able to go out to vote. You could break your leg and not be able to go out to vote. You know, a lot of different things can happen. And we also want to emphasize that receiving a vote by mail ballot does not mean that you have to actually use it. If you change your mind, you can still vote in person. I mean, we recommend having the vote by mail ballot sent to you because if nothing else, it's a good reminder. You know, you're getting this big envelope and it's telling you, oh, by the way, there's a election coming up. So when we're filling out or helping a voter fill out this bottom portion, there's just a couple things that we need to inform them of. One, and that's highlighted in yellow, is you only technically need to provide either your Florida driver license or Florida ID or the last 4 digits of your social security number. We highly recommend that you actually input both numbers. And that's because you're not going to remember which identifier you have given the supervisor of elections. You only had to give them one or the other when you're registering to vote or when you update it. And by providing both, that way they will be able to find you. They will be able to confirm who you are. Okay. The other thing is where I've got the blue arrow, it's always useful if you provide some sort of phone number, either home phone, mobile number, and then an email address so that if there is a problem with your ballot when you turn it in by mail, they can contact you quickly. You can also change your party affiliation at this point. And then we recommend that when you sign this form, you use the signature that's on your Florida driver's license. And the reason that we recommend that is that, as you saw, most people, certainly new voters, are registering to vote via the Florida Department, the Health, Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle. And also, if there is a problem with your ballot and you have to prove who you are, what are you going to do? You're going to use your driver's license. So just use the signature that's on your Florida driver's license. After you finish completing the form, there are 6 side strips that are sticky. That's the sealer. People need to remove those. I thought that was kind of obvious, but then it was pointed out to us recently that it's not. And so just remind people that they're going to have to remove those side strips. And they fold the mailer to seal it, and the address is on the outside. So the postage is prepaid, and the mailer is automatically going to go to the supervisor of elections here in Broward County. Now, for those of you, which is certainly not me, if you're a tech-savvy person, you can use the QR code. And that QR code is actually on the trifold mailer. And then we also have it as an 8.5 11 sheet on our tables. And you just take a picture with your phone, and that's going to take you to browardvotes.gov. And you can go to that site and you can register to vote, or you can actually request the vote by mail ballot there. I just want to give a couple hints about registering to vote online. You cannot do it unless you have a valid driver's license or Florida identification card. You also have to know the issue date of that card. And as I was talking with Carol Smith, who recently did this, it's not easy to find. You have to look for the ISS, the date associated with ISS. And I've got the arrow pointing to it that indicates where it is. Otherwise, how would anybody really know exactly what that means? And then you also have to know the last 4 digits of your social security number. You have to have that in order to register to vote online. Now, this is what the opening screen looks like. It's registertovoteflorida.gov. You can either continue in English or you can continue in Spanish. And if you really weren't sure if you're registered or not, you can do, am I already registered? Input some information, and it will tell you you're registered or not. Most people are going to go to this site to either register the first time or to update their voter registration information. It is absolutely essential that you input your personal identification exactly, let me repeat, exactly as it is shown on your ID, whether it's a driver's license or a Florida ID. You simply have to input that exactly. Now, I have placed a video, a how-to video for registering online, and that's on the League's YouTube channel. It takes you through each and every screen. I'm just giving you the short version. But again, you have to do it exactly as it appears on the ID. So if there is something wrong with your Florida driver's license, one, you need to get it fixed, and two, you're going to have to use the paper form because everything has to match in order to move forward after this step. When you get to the end, if you're at an event where, where the League is tabling, or you're at home and your printer, you don't have a printer, or your printer is not working, at a minimum, you want to take a screenshot or at least write down the reference number, and that's what's at the end of the red arrow. This way you can prove that you did in fact register to vote. And so that way, if you have a problem when you do go to vote in person, or you're voting via vote by mail ballot, they will have a number to use to try to track down what the problem is. Again, we are dealing with a computer system, different things, glitches can happen, but this is going to be your proof that you did in fact register to vote online. So I've been speaking about election laws and registering to vote, and none of this is going to matter if people don't vote. We've had this significant drop in people who did not vote. I mean, it was, almost 651,000 people, that over half of those who could have registered who could have voted in 2022 who did not do that. And this is especially concerning in the Black and Hispanic communities. So one of the things that the League tries to do is to educate voters about the importance of their vote. And this is the inside of our brochure that emphasizes that your vote is your voice. Trying to point out that everything that you do or everything that you need is affected by an elected official. They are making decisions about the services that you do and that you receive. Again, if people don't like what's going on at the top of the ballot, start at the bottom. Who the judges are, who the school board is made up of, who are your county commissioners, who is running your town. Those are things that are going to directly affect you. And that is just as important as the people at the top of the ticket. But you have to get out there and vote. And that's what we're trying to tell people. And then people always say, well, one vote isn't going to matter. Well, we know perfectly well in Broward County that it does, because we had the November 2021, the special election. This was actually the Democratic primary for U.S. House Florida District 20, what was then 20. It was won by 5 votes. And we all know incumbency means probably who's going to get elected the next time they have to go up for re-election. But it was a 5-vote difference. So yes, every vote does matter, and every vote does count. And then I'm going to conclude with my favorite slide. If your vote had no value, why would they be spending all this money? So obviously it does have value. We have to get out the vote. Now, if you would like to help with voter registration and voter education, you must be a member of the League to help at our tables anyway. And you can join at lwvbroward.org and indicate you have an interest in voter services, which includes voter education. There's a training document on registering people to vote, and you have to obtain 100% on the quiz. And this may sound very daunting, but it's not. You can print out the training document and then take the quiz with the document. It's like an open book test. And then contact Andrea Sleeper at the email address shown. Andrea is the person who coordinates all the programs that we do throughout the county. And I will stop there. If you do have questions and we don't answer them tonight, there is my email address again, melliott@ufl.edu. And I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, and it's wonderful to know people are still here. You never know, when you're sharing your screen, how many people are actually left there.
It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Thank you. If you have any questions, you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand. And Fran, I see you've got your hand up.
I do. I get a vote by mail. I registered and I requested it. My question is, I like to take my vote by mail ballot to the early registration, the early voter place.
Mm-hmm.
Can I bring that in? Do I have to turn it into them, or can they just void it and I bring it into the ballot so that I have a cheat sheet?
Right. No, you can use it as a cheat sheet. What they will do is they will take a black marker and they mark out that outside area. And sometimes they might write void across it, but you can then take it into the voting booth with you.
Perfect.
And then as you leave, turn it in to the clerk or whoever's there. And we put it, because I do work the polls, and then we put it into a special envelope, special, container for, we call it spoiled, ballots. But yes, so you can mark it ahead of time and take it right in there with you. You absolutely can do that.
Thank you.
Carolyn, I think I saw you had your hand up.
Yes, you did. My question is, the PowerPoint presentation you just did, are we able to get a hard copy?
Good.
I will send it. I can send it to league members.
Okay.
With the caveat that you not share it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because, right. I mean, that's kind of one of the rules the league has, is that we don't share our PowerPoints, and certainly not with outside, groups.
But now, okay, I
yeah.
understand not sharing it like page, but can we get some of the use some of the information?
It's not working, Larry. I can't undo my video.
Like if, for instance, I wanted to emphasize at somewhere that I'm at, okay, we had X number of people that were registered, but only X number of people voted. We can use the numbers, but not, oh, okay.
Yeah, no problem. And I will send that out to you, Carolyn. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Carla.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good.
I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, but of the Miami-Dade chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, do they have similar, I guess, resources or toolkit? You all said you had the pamphlet, or maybe that's just your supervisor of election, where we could actually give something to a potential voter, put something in their hand with information.
Yes, Jody Lehman is your voter services chair. And the voter services chair do have access to some of these materials. Like we put them into a special Google Drive that's managed by the State League. And I have spoken with Jody about that. Because yes, that brochure that we have that talks about, why it's important to vote, anybody can use that. All you'd have to do is change the league name, and you're certainly allowed to use that. But the trifold mailer with the voter registration and the vote by mail request, that's only for Broward County.
Okay.
Okay. And I
so
like
how
your
would
name. That was my sister's name. It was Carla with a K.
Okay. But I guess so I need to get in touch with Jody.
Yes, why don't you talk to Jody? Jody's trying to, put together the voter services team and
Okay.
in preparation. So yeah, contact Jody. Do you have her email address?
I sure don't.
Okay. I've got your email address now, and I will make a note to send you Jody's.
Okay. Or if you have it, I have a pencil and paper right here.
No, I don't have it
Okay,
handy.
okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Stephanie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned this, but just as a reminder that the vote by mail ballots can be returned at early voting sites, but not on election day. Is that in your presentation somewhere?
No, it's not in this one. But that's very correct that you can return the vote by mail ballot in the mailing envelope at the early voting sites. And because Joe has made, there's 6 permanent, branches of the Supervisor of Elections office now, primarily at regional libraries and then also at the Pat Larkin Community Center. Those will be open for vote by mail drop box use even before early voting. So those will be open just like the downtown office and the Lauderhill office. We just have to be honest here. Joe has been very good about figuring out how to deal with these new laws. And he's helped us, the league, tremendously, and other 3 PVROs by having that trifold mailer. And then he keeps trying to work around the vote by mail, the drop boxes too. So we will have plenty of places. I mean, there's going to be one in Miramar. The other one, I think, is the South Regional Library, et cetera. I mean, there's 6 places throughout the entire county now where we will be able to drop off vote by mail ballots. Because I can tell you, and you've heard this story before probably, as a poll worker out here in Southwest Ranches, I have seen people tear up their vote by mail ballot because they bring it in on election day to the poll. They've got like their husbands or their daughters or sons, somebody in the family. They can't drop it off at the precinct. And there's no way they were going to drive down to Lauderhill to drop it off. And so they just tore it up and put it in the trash right in front of us. So now we're going to have ways to get around that. So, I mean, it's really, really going to be helpful. Other questions? And we will put this video, I'll upload it to our YouTube channel. And I will send that link out to everyone tomorrow, to everybody who had registered. But if you're not familiar with the league's YouTube channel, just Google it and you will find past presentations also. Other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was great.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica.
Very, very informative. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
It's like there's good news and bad news all in the same place, right? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great evening, everyone.